Hey, it's Kisha here with Defending the Early Years podcast. We'll be focusing on amplifying the voices of early childhood educators, advocates, and all of those who love children.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Defending the Early Years podcast. I'm here today with Jocelyn Robertson. And Jocelyn has a very unique perspective on the early childhood world. And the reason why is because she has been a student, a parent, and she's now the director of Cottage Co-op. So, you're going to be able to tell us, Jocelyn, some things from perspectives that some of us don't even have. So I'm really, really, really excited about that. I'm fascinated by that. And I can't wait to hear and learn all about your work. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and this journey to where you are now?
Yeah, thanks. I'm so happy to talk to you. So I graduated from college with a women's studies degree, which, there's just, you can become a women's studies professor or you can do retail, there's not a lot of direct paths out of there. So I did retail for a while and worked in children's stores actually. And but then when I went and had a baby on purpose, it was very hard to see how making, not great money was going to work for, needing to take care of this baby because any babysitter was going to make what I made or more. So I had to rearrange all my plans. And when it was time for my child to start preschool, we looked at a couple of schools and the first one was like a beautiful building right next to our house that was like, I would really love to love this school. And I just got in there and it was so sterile and all of the artwork on the walls was clearly done by the adults because they really wanted all those pom-poms to be glued on in precisely the right way to make that snowman, even though we live in Southern California where there's never going to be snow. It's so unrelatable. And I was just like, oh, I see. And they're like, they're giving us this tour and telling us, so these children, every day we play outside, 20 minutes of outside play. I'm like, oh, okay. I was just like, I wanted to like that school so bad. I just was like, I just ran out the door, and we only toured two other schools. And one of them was the school where I ended up, and we toured this school because I went to it as a kid. We also toured Pacific Oaks Children's School, which they have a children's school and a college. The college is very well regarded in our area for teaching people about early childhood. So we came out of that tour. I was crying and going, I want to go here. And so my kid's dad went, you should go here actually. And so I went back to grad school at that time, at the same time my son started preschool. Because you can be a preschool teacher without a bunch of other education, but I didn't know anything about early childhood and I wanted to be a really good preschool teacher. So it was really helpful for me. I had like a strong theoretical background, and that's been really important in my choices because it helps me stand behind what I think is best for our school, what I think is best for our kids, and be able to back it up with a whole bunch of studies, names, and essays about these kinds of things where I think sometimes teachers feel pushed around because they think that parents want them to do it a certain way. I'm like, well, they are not early childhood experts. I am. So I'm going to tell you why we're doing it this way.
And you had something there because even as a non-early childhood educator and as a parent, you walked into that environment and knew that there was something that wasn't right, that wasn't the best for your own child. So that's a good insight already.
Yeah, I've long been a person who just refuses to be standardized. As a kid, I just was like disgusted that mandated standardized testing was going to try and discern anything about me as a person. All the best parts of me are not going to be captured on a standardized test. And I just was like, I cannot believe that this is really how we're going to go about evaluation, So
I think a lot of play warriors are ex kids who did not take that crap.
Yes. Why should a person, honestly, I just have refused to be a cog in the system. So, fortunately for me, that kind of worked out. It's not that easy to refuse those things. But, this is where I'm glad for that theoretical background. Did you ever read Herbert Cole? I won't learn from you. It's like so insightful about like how kids, and actually when I say kids, I always mean people, because kids are learners and also adults are learners. We're all learners all the time, and teachers, and so it's about how if you aren't respectful to kids, you don't like see kids as people, you don't like function as if they're fully capable human beings, then they just will refuse to deal with you and whatever you're trying to peddle. And it just says so much about like what happens with school, because so many teachers feel like respect is a one-way street. They mean respect in a, kind of like, I have authority over you and therefore you should treat me a certain way kind of respect, as opposed to like actual human relationship kind of respect.
Yeah, that back and forth respect where I respect you and you respect me. That's not what they're talking about sometimes.
That is certainly not. Yeah. And so then they get kids who, refuse to do the work, or, like do the absolute minimal effort, because why stand here and be insulted by this person that doesn't even acknowledge me as a person? So, like this spans from preschool all the way through any age that you're teaching and learning with. But it's very important in preschool and cannot be overlooked.
Yeah, it's the relationship piece, like the genuine, authentic relationship. And we know that respect is the base of all of that. And
Absolutely.
if you don't have that, if you don't respect the person, that's a big wall up. And so you ended up enrolling yourself at the Pacific Oaks. And did your child go to their preschool?
No, my son went to the co-op, because as a person with a young child, all of our friends were still kind of like going to bars at night, and I didn't have anybody to hang out with that was a parent. And even sometimes, like people your own age or that you've known before have kids, but they are just raising them so differently than you are, and I just didn't have people who were wanting to, be my friend in the way that I needed a friend right then. Like, well, I only have 2 hours to hang out while my child is asleep, and it has to be at my house, just because, I just was so hard to have friends at that time. And so I just knew I needed community around me, and I didn't have any. I had to build it. And so that was what had me choose a co-op specifically. And that's turned out to be just the best decision of my life. Like, I've since dedicated my entire life to co-ops. It's like all I do all day. So
wow. Well, we just started in my program. We just started. It's not a true co-op, but it is a parent participation program where it really is influenced by the co-op model. And already, it was set to start last year, but because of coronavirus, we didn't have parents come in. But this is our first year where parents are going to be able to come in. And so we started this summer with some play dates just to get the kids acclimated with the facility and the teachers and the other families and other children. And it's just been amazing. The families are really starting to connect. Some of them already knew each other. But you can see this village forming around the children. And one of the things that we did was we all read It's Okay Not to Share this weekend by Heather Shoemaker. And one parent came to me and she's like, I read it. Oh my gosh, already it has changed the way that I parent. And she said, and now my husband's reading it and my mother's reading it. And it's just so amazing how quickly we are connecting together and changing each other's lives. So I'm looking forward to a year of that, and fascinated by the idea of the village that's forming around the child in that context.
So valuable when we're talking about connection is that primary thing that without which education cannot move forward. So, instead of just like one safe adult, one teacher that is like that, kind of English teacher in high school that people have that saves their lives or whatever like that. And you can be that person in preschool, but imagine creating a whole village of people where every parent in that community also knows that child as a person and also can see that child in their fullness. And so like when they're going through their hard biting thing, or when they're going through the thing where like, they're fine at home, but at school, they're fine at school, but at home, they're completely flipping out on the parents and the parents are so stressed out. Instead of being alone with that, they can see from a lot of different angles because they're seeing their child through everyone else's eyes also. So such a wonderful thing about team teaching too, but like that you can see a child from many angles and everyone triangulate those stories. So we know a lot about a child, not just how they are around us, but how they are in a lot of different contexts. And parents have that too, where they see a particular version of their child because they're their safe person. And so maybe they're melting down every day after school or something. And at school, we're like, really, that's fascinating because I saw them demonstrate those skills that you're so worried that they don't have yet. Like every day when we're there, this is the child that does that thing. And so the parent may not get to see it with their own eyes, but there's so many loving eyes on those kids looking for how those kids are growing and how we can support them and the particular growth that they're up to.
Mm-hmm. And how do you prepare parents for that role? I mean, you're an early childhood educator, so you have the, education and experience to support children, but how do you prepare the parents to play the role that they play, and also expand a little bit on what is the role of the parent in this context?
So there's a lot of different models of co-ops. I'm now the president of CCPPNS, which is all co-ops across all preschool co-ops across California. So I've come to realize there are many different models in the way that people do this, but at our particular co-op preschool, we have like 5 teachers and myself, and there are in each classroom there's 2 to 3 teachers and 2 parent teachers each day. So that's for, like in a 2s class, there are 4 adults to 12 kids. In a class of kids who are 4 and 5, that's going to be 3 adults to 18 kids. So fabulous ratios, which is nice to be able to do. Yes. And then it's also the case that so parents volunteer in the classroom. At our school, they're scheduled about once every 2 or 3 weeks. In some schools, it's once a week or something like that. And different schools have different arrangements about how that works. We schedule them ahead of time so that everyone can kind of plan their life and be able to participate in a way that works for their job and things like that too. And then during the morning, they help set up the classroom, they get the hand washing stations ready, and they sweep the ground so that there's not sand to slip on and things like that. But the main thing that they do is during the school day, they're right there pushing kids on the swing, reading 1,000 books to them, working out hard problems, trying to dig a big hole that everybody's excited to fill with water, or whatever things that kids want to enroll them in. And then at the very end of the day, after kids are having some lunch, a team of adults debriefs together. So all the teachers and parents that were in that class today, we have like a 15-20 minute debrief where we talk about like, what did you say to that kid over there that turns that situation around? Or I was in this situation with these kids and I don't know what I was supposed to say. There's not really a supposed to, of course, but like I didn't know how to handle that situation. Yeah. And so we can give ongoing coaching all the time like that. But in addition to that, we have a training at the beginning of the year, and we have parent education opportunities every month of the year. And so we consider it that the teachers are teaching parents at the same time that they're teaching students that are kids. And also the teachers are learning from parents at the same time that they're learning from kids too. It's all of us are all teachers and all learners.
Yeah. Wonderful. I love that. So when you went as a child, I have so many questions about that time. You went as a child with your own parents, and is your mom or dad, are they educators? Are they early educators, or were they co-op parents?
Well, my mom surely worked at the co-op because you have to, but I can't remember much about that. The only thing I remember is that she really didn't want to have to do a bunch of crafts for the fundraiser.
I was going to ask you, what did you remember? What do you remember as a student of a co-op, of this particular place? And does that inform your work now, knowing what you experienced and what you remember?
It's funny. I'll just say about my mom that in fact, she is an educator. She's a school librarian. So, I have a good background in terms of education to start with. But what I remember from that time is like, when you're so young, you just kind of remember little vignettes of stuff, I think. And the things that I remember, the most important thing I remember, in fact, and I told this story to my parents just a week ago at our opening ceremonies. I wanted to play dress up every day, and I had a best friend, and we both wanted to play dress up every day. And it was a long time ago. And so what everyone had in their dress up boxes, they didn't have those dress up clothes that are like a princess dress from a movie. What we used was nylon negligees from the 60s, and they're vibrant pastels. They were so fabulous. That's what everybody had in our dress up boxes. And so my best friend and I each wore one of those beautiful negligees. And then it was, like 1980, and ladies wore a fancy hat and gloves when they were dressed up still at that time. So we both wanted to wear a fancy hat, but there was only one hat with a veil, and it matched my friend's dress. And the only one that even remotely matched my dress was a firefighter hat. So I wore a firefighter hat with a negligee like every day.
Oh my goodness. And you remember that? That's memorable. Okay. I'll tell you that.
I still like those negligees, but for the kids that I serve now, I don't have any of those because you have to buy them vintage, but
Yeah.
But instead I give them, once they know how to extrapolate, they don't need such literal toys anymore. I give them loose pieces of fabric and they make their own costumes. I give loose parts instead of already made fabrics, already made costumes.
That's exactly what we do. We have just swaths of fabric that the kids, their capes, their dresses, their everything, their hats, their all kinds of things. And I love that. And I'm trying to get the visual of the lawn, the the fire hat and the lacy outfit, you marching around there with that. So I'm also fascinated about how you went from student to parent and then ended up in the position as director of this program. So take me along that journey.
Well, it's been a bumpy road, but so I started back at grad school at the same time my son started as a student, and so by the time he was finishing up and going to kindergarten, I only had one kid at preschool, my daughter, and I felt like I was getting some brain cells back after those long years of no sleep and stuff like that. And I started saying, like, to the previous director, I started saying, hey, like if you need a substitute, I could fill in sometimes and things. So I started that way, which is often the case in our school, because it's a very specialized kind of school. Like a lot of schools are just not like this. And so if you like this, then there's not that many choices of places you're going to find it.
Yeah.
So often parents are wanting to become part of our staff, actually. There's 3 former parents on our staff right now, in fact, aside from myself. So yes, yes, kind of a cult, but in a really good way where you were totally allowed to leave. So I started as a substitute, and I remember saying to that former director that my explicit goal was to have her job someday, and she rolled her eyes and went, "Ugh, you can have it." But I think that she was more accustomed to working at a school where there was a more corporate type of accountability, instead of this like highly interpersonal accountability that can be very like sometimes teachers who have come from a more conventional background come to the school and they're just like, parents are watching you every minute of the day. I'm like, so please act with integrity. That's not really a thing for me because I just can't help it. Like I'm not able to act against my instincts like that, So it wasn't a stressful thing for me, and especially this is the environment that I chose, But I think
it's an environment you've always known too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it was easy for me to be comfortable with that, but it's not comfortable for every teacher. And lots of teachers have just been like, I don't know why we have to do this so much harder than you just say goodbye to the parents and, like, just do your thing. But, it's the same way that sometimes teachers are like, I just want to implement my days of the week curriculum that was given to me. And I don't want to have to think about what's happening for each individual child and why they cannot stay on their mat. Well, literally the only thing I'm interested in what's happening for each individual child. And I don't care if they stay on their mat, or not much. So So anyway, that former director, I became a staff teacher after a couple of years after a year of substitute teaching. And then a couple of years later, that director left in September, which was a surprise to everyone. And I was the heir apparent for that job because I had clearly stated that I wanted it. I just was drastically unprepared because I was only like a second year teacher. And now I was going to be a full-time teacher and director. So that's already too many jobs, really. But the classroom stuff, I love it. Like that's why I wanted to do this. I didn't go to school to boss adults around or whatever. But of course, like I've carefully chosen people that don't really need to be bossed around also.
So now you are out of the classroom, even though we never leave the classroom, but out of the classroom and full-time director?
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. And what would you say is your mission, like your overall mission of your program? What's the mission there?
I should really have my mission statement memorized, but
it doesn't have to be the statement, just the general, the general mission there.
Well, I have a personal mission that's separate from my school mission, although they're related. So my school mission is about supporting parents, children, and teachers through a play-based cooperative environment in child-led liberatory education, really specifically, education that's about realizing the potential of individual people and lifting up individual people in terms of our ability to contribute to democracy and things like that. So that's quite explicit about the school. But in terms of my own mission, like in my larger work in CCPPNS and things like that, I really want to elevate best practices, research-based best practices in terms of how we do education overall, and especially how we do discipline in education, because I think that there's a lot of folks that need to catch up real quick on that.
Mm-hmm. And I knew that you had the deep interest in the discipline portion, and I knew that you had the deep interest in doing it different. So when you talk about looking at how we do school and how we can do it different, what do you mean by that?
Well, so when you're thinking about why you do something a certain way, you got to kind of zoom out and look at, well, what's the goal? And I think that it's very clear when you look at education on the whole in the United States, that our goals have been set by like trying to produce productive factory workers. And these were not great goals when they were adopted 100 years ago. And now they're, actively harmful, and they're, squashing creativity, kind of like trying to standardize everybody and all these kinds of things in a world where innovation is the main thing that we need.
Yeah. And if you can tell me, the children that come to your program are between what ages?
We serve kids 2 to 1st grade.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you, what do they do when they leave there? Because in my head, I'm thinking maybe they leave there at 5 years old. That is wonderful. And their parents are also still a part of the program when they get into the elementary ages? So
once kids are enrolled in 1st grade, they have to leave us. Although, sometimes families have 3 kids and they're able to somebody has a 12-year-old right now, and they also have a 4-year-old. So they're able to straddle support for all of their kids while, one child is enrolled at the school. So, but yeah, often our parents are talking about, oh, I wish that you had an elementary school that did the same thing. And there's a billion private schools in our immediate area. Pasadena is a really fascinating place in terms of the explicitly white flight that led to founding of many private schools in our district. So that's a whole other conversation. But people really want there to be a school like this for elementary school. And there are some, close ones. But philosophically, like, this is just a very explicit thing. And because we're such a small organization, we're like 55 families, we're a lot able to stick to our ideals. Whereas like, at a bigger school, there's a lot of other bottom lines that you have to consider.
And are there rules around you guys going older?
Well, it's our license, but we also are, we're on a residential property. So it's a little bit tricky. We have a conditional use permit to be in the house that we're in. It's like a big, beautiful 20s house with a huge backyard. We filled in the swimming pool to be a sandbox. So it's a very special property.
That's a deep sandbox. They can really dig.
Yeah. Sometimes we dig down really deep and find like part of the cement that was not exactly the same shape. It's fascinating. Yeah.
And that's why you said employ the parents to dig a big hole. I got it.
A real big hole. Yeah. Well, it's really fun to jump in a big hole, but yeah, so we there's a limit to how much we can expand in this particular space, and this very space is very, very special. So it's hard.
I was gonna say, but you know what? Sometimes it's special because it's little, you know?
Yes, I think that's actually, it's actually become really important to me because during the before times, the school had expanded just slightly to kind of the maximum amount of people allowed on campus. And I thought it was becoming a little disconnected. People sometimes didn't know everyone. And it turns out that like people are only able to, we are still wired to live in, small bands of, kind of like family groups, and our wiring still thinks it's like 200,000 years ago. And the way that we live now hasn't really caught up. So people can only remember like 150 individuals as like their people. And when it gets bigger than that, it just, people start kind of going us and them about stuff. So for me, it was really important that we keep our community around this size so that we can make sure that people really feel included, because that's part of my mission is, like radical inclusion.
Yes, love it. And I would love to hear a little bit more about the idea of radical inclusion. We are going to have to wrap it up soon, but before we go, what can you tell me about radical inclusion? I'm super interested. Like, tell me.
There's so much. I'll try and be brief. Well, so I just gave a talk to my incoming parents telling them that I'm autistic, queer, poly to my brand new parents coming in, because I want people to know up front that like I'm willing to be weird along with everybody else, I also am really explicit that I want to include a lot of different neurotypes in our classrooms and things like that, because I think we all learn a lot more and a lot better when there are different neurotypes and disabilities as part of our classroom. Obviously, we're always trying to be as inclusive as we can about all of the different cultural groups, racial groups, and everything else that's part of Los Angeles. Is where, we're in Los Angeles. There's a lot of opportunity. If we are a way too white environment, it means something's wrong, So I think that like sometimes when people are talking about diversity and inclusion, we're talking about like just the kind of hot topic things like race and maybe LGBTQ. And that's very important and always part of my equation. And also, I think it's really important that, we're openly warm and inclusive to trans families and families where there's a different arrangement of parents or caregivers, folks who are, might have had a really hard time at a different school because of what the other school is perceiving as behavioral problems. But when we are looking at them, we're looking at it through the lens of what is this behavior telling us? And we're able to provide a different kind of environment that meets that child where they are in terms of their, sensory needs and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Love it. And I think that that goes back to the idea of the connectedness, the relationship. It goes back to the idea of the whole child, as they come with their families attached. They don't come on their own. They didn't get here by themselves. So I absolutely love this model and am excited about what we're starting at our school and wish that it could be. I mean, the fact that it's your entire school is remarkable. It's really a struggle to get enough families to fill a classroom who have the ability to be a part of the program just because of work schedules and, other children and life and all those things. But wow, it's wonderful to see that there are programs out there that are accessible to families, that include families in this way. So thank you so much. How can people get in, read a little bit more about your program, learn from you? Where can they find you?
Our school's website is a great resource. I've got a blog there that I'm quite proud of. And you can also, there's a contact us button that would reach me on there, which is cottagecoop.org. And that's easy to do, and see pictures of muddy kids playing outside, and read my blog, write me an email.
All right. Can you say that again? I think my computer might have stalled out. So I don't know if it was yours or mine, but say that again because I didn't hear you. What is your
Sure.
address?
So my the school's website is cottagecoop.org. Co-op looks like coop when you write it all together. And
cottage coop. That's cute.
Yeah. Yep. So you can reach me directly through there with a contact us button, or read my blog on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and insight. And I can't wait to keep reading your blog and learning from you as you continue this has been a long journey for you, this long journey as I'm starting a brand new one. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And that was another episode of the Defending the Early Years podcast. Defending the Early Years works to support the rights and needs of young children nationally. Learn more at DEY.org. Pay us a visit, sign up for our newsletter, or connect with us on social media. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.